Hey, fundraisers, welcome. If you're lying awake at night wondering how your numbers stack up against everyone else's, well, you're in exactly the right place. We're going to break down the key data from the 2026 Benchmark Report and turn all those numbers into a clear story you can actually use. Okay, let's jump in. I want you to just keep this one big question in the back of your mind as we go through all this data. Is your growth coming from getting more new people in the door? Or is it coming from building stronger, deeper relationships with the supporters you already have? Because honestly, the answer to that is the single biggest story in fundraising right now. So here it is, the two sides of the coin for 2026. The challenge is real, and you're probably feeling it. Donor retention is pretty much flatlined. And get this, a staggering 3 out of 4 new donors will give once, and then they're gone. Oof. But here's the twist, and it is a big one. The donors who are sticking around, they're more committed than ever. Their lifetime value shot up an incredible 18%. So what's the takeaway? It's this. Real, sustainable growth isn't coming from just casting a wider net anymore. It's coming from digging deeper wells. The organizations that are thriving are focusing on strengthening the relationships they already have. That idea is the key to understanding everything else we're about to look at. So here's our game plan. We'll start with that big picture, depth versus breadth. Then we're going to zero in on the critical gaps, especially around donor retention. After that, we'll talk about the awesome power of compounding small wins. And we'll wrap it all up with a super practical 4-step action plan you can actually start using today. All right, let's dive into that big picture. Again, everything we're seeing in the data this year really points back to this theme of depth over breadth. It's a pretty fundamental shift in how we should all be thinking about growth. You know, this quote from Carly Berna just nails it. The old playbook of just acquire, 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 and send out more appeals, it's just not as effective as it used to be. The organizations that are really pulling ahead are the ones doubling down on the people who already raised their hand and said, hey, I care about what you do. This isn't just a small trend, it's a major strategic shift. So what does this actually look like in the numbers? Well, it brings us to what is arguably the most important metric of all. This is the one that tells you if you're building something sustainable or if you're just refilling a leaky bucket year after year. I'm talking about donor retention. So the overall retention rate is sitting at 54.73%. Now, on the surface, that number is basically flat from last year, which doesn't sound super exciting. But think about it. This is happening while fewer new donors are coming in. So to hold steady actually means organizations are getting better at keeping their existing donors engaged. That's a quiet win. But here's where things get really interesting. If you're at a smaller org, one with a budget under $1 million, you're retaining just over 37% of your donors. The big guys, they're retaining almost 57%. That is a massive gap. And a lot of it really just comes down to having systems and automation in place for thanking donors and showing them their impact. So why is retention so tough? Where, exactly, is the leak in the bucket coming from? The data couldn't be clearer on this. It all starts, or stops, right after that very first gift. Just look at this number, 25.84%. That's the percentage of first-time donors who actually come back and make a second gift. Let's flip that around. That means nearly 75% of your new donors give once and you never hear from them again. This right here, this is the single biggest leak you have. And just like we saw with overall retention, this gap is even more stark for smaller organizations. They convert just 14.5% of new donors. Larger orgs convert over 28%. That's almost double. Now, I know that can feel a little discouraging, but please, I want you to see this as a massive opportunity. A little bit of focus here can make a huge difference for you. Okay, that's enough about the leaks. Let's pivot from the problem to the really incredible opportunity here. The power of compounding, what happens when you do keep those donors engaged. This is where that depth story gets really, really excited. For the first time, this report is tracking a brand new metric called gift frequency. It's not just about if a donor gives again, it's about how often they're showing up for you. And as you're about to see, this is a super powerful indicator of how engaged someone is. And it's a huge protector of your retention rate. The benchmark is 4.15 gifts per donor per year. Now, that's just a slight tick upwards, but that small increase is one of the main reasons retention managed to hold steady. Why? It's simple, really. Donors who give more often are just way, way harder to lose. And all of this brings us to the ultimate report card for your donor relationships, lifetime value, or LTV. This is basically the total amounts of money you can expect a donor to give you over their entire journey with your cause. And here it is. This is the big payoff. Donor lifetime value jumped by nearly 18% this year. This is easily one of the strongest, most positive signals in the entire report, and it's the direct result of growing deeper, not wider. So you might be asking, how did that happen if retention was flat? Well, it's because a bunch of small improvements all compounded over time. Retention held steady, that was the foundation. Then gift frequency ticked up just a little. Average gift amounts also climbed. When you stack all those small wins together across a donor's entire relationship, the result is this huge jump in their overall value to your organization. It's pretty amazing. Okay, so we've seen the big picture, we've spotted the gaps, and we've uncovered the opportunities. Now for the most important part. What in the world should you actually do about all this? Let's get really practical with a clear 4-step action plan. Okay, step 1, build a dedicated welcome series for new donors in their first 30 to 60 days. This directly attacks that massive drop-off between the first and second gift. Step 2, use recurring giving to accelerate frequency. It's the absolute fastest way to get donors showing up more often. Third, focus your efforts on upgrading donors in the broad middle of your file. These are your loyal folks who aren't major donors yet. And finally, just remember, you don't need a silver bullet. Small, steady improvements across these areas are what compound into those massive LTV gains. I know this can feel like a lot to take in, so I want to leave you with this really important piece of advice. You do not have to do everything at once. Just look at your own data, find the one metric where you have the biggest gap, and just start there. Progress, not perfection, is the goal here. So I will leave you with this final question to take back to your team. Based on everything we just walked through, what's the one small, tangible improvement you can make this week to start growing deeper, not wider, with the people who already believe in your mission?